Seems like Microsoft might be dropping out of the console wars, along with the fact that the Xbox Series X might end up being their final game system. And it's not too surprising considering the fact that a few years ago, I believe a top executive had mentioned something about Microsoft moving towards cloud based gaming because I guess it's more convenient considering how everything is about streaming nowadays. And to, I guess, some people, um, buying game systems and buying, physical video games is considered to be old fashioned. And I think that's the case mainly because the price of just about everything has risen within the past couple of years because of inflation, a bad economy, and for the most part, a lot of people don't have the time and the money to necessarily buy a lot of the stuff that's out there right now. But despite all of that, the PlayStation 5 is doing pretty good so far in terms of sales because I believe since its release back in late 2020, it's managed to do over 50 mil in terms of sales. Unfortunately, Xbox Series X is not doing too good in comparison to the PlayStation 5 because thus far, I believe it's managed to reach somewhere around the ballpark of 27 or 28 mil within the past like 3 years or so after the game after the console was released back in late 2020. And the Xbox One, even though like in terms of lifetime sales, it managed to sell more than the Xbox Series X thus far. Um, for the most part, it couldn't really compete with Sony for the most part. In relation to last generation gaming, because you look at the PlayStation 4, that managed to do over 117 mil in terms of sales. And even though the PlayStation 4 didn't sell nearly as much as the PlayStation 2, I believe it sold more than the PlayStation 3, which is a good thing. It looks like the PlayStation 5 is going down a good direction in terms of lifetime sales. And for the most part, Sony has more high profile um, video games in general that's going to help the PlayStation 5 become more popular and sell more, like Marvel's Spider-Man 2, like God of War Ragnarok. And I believe we got some more Sony exclusives coming up in the future. The Xbox Series X, for the most part, um, it doesn't seem like it had that type of it didn't have the type of games that were as popular as what Sony was putting out, which is why Microsoft ended up acquiring Activision Blizzard so they could have more franchises to work with. And even then, I mean, Microsoft hasn't been doing too well in relation to their games because um, the latest Call of Duty, which came out back in 2023, was considered a miss. A lot of people didn't like it. It was probably the lowest rated Call of Duty game ever. And this upcoming Call of Duty game, Black Ops 6, looks very promising and interesting, but I don't want to jinx anything. Um, I do feel that the console wars, for the most part, isn't necessarily over. It's just changed. And it seems like Microsoft might be playing somewhat of a similar role, or they'll end up playing a similar role that Sega played, back in the day, like 20 years ago, where Sega was kind of just like a third party developer and they had games on PlayStation, on Nintendo. And it seems like, for the most part, there's going to be like a war between Nintendo and Sony in relation to competition for the most part. But I don't think those two corporations see themselves as competitors, even though they are, because Nintendo caters more to children and to like a family based audience, um, while Sony caters more to an adult audience for the most part. And I guess that's something that might end up being, bad for, any third party developers or what have you. I mean, people will still buy their games and everything, but Nintendo's first party games, just like Sony's first party games, will always do the biggest numbers in relation to sales, and I do feel that that's definitely going to be detrimental to third party developers for the most part because Microsoft's consoles, whether it be Xbox 360, Xbox One, or Xbox Series X, for the most part, it's a platform for third party games and developers to shine on because, for the most part, the Xbox consoles are just as powerful as the PlayStation consoles, but for the most part, it's like an alternative. It's like the American alternative to to what you're being offered in relation to Sony and the PlayStation 5, and that's something that's pretty cool, and that's something that a lot of people enjoyed for years. That was a part of the appeal of the Xbox 360 back in the day. But it seems like nowadays things are just changing in general, and that like for the most part, the console wars is not going to be what it once was, because even though Microsoft can't necessarily compete with Sony, I do feel that Nintendo, for the most part, has IPs that are still huge attractions, like the Zelda series or the Mario series. You look at the past few years, like since 2017, Nintendo has done some of its best work in relation to Zelda games and Mario games, with Super Mario Odyssey, with Zelda Breath of the Wild, with Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and those games are among like the best selling games that Nintendo has like made and published like ever. So obviously Nintendo's fan base isn't waning or declining at all, and for the most part, I don't think Sony's first party games are necessarily declining in popularity as well, because when it comes down to action adventure games or action RPGs, some of the best stuff is normally on Sony. And you look at one of the best selling games for the PlayStation 4 was Marvel's Spider-Man, which came out back in 2018. I think it did 20 mil in terms of sales overall. And to this day, it's probably one of the best selling games on a PlayStation console. I believe that game sold more than Final Fantasy VII um, did on the PlayStation One back in the day. So it's a testament to how popular the Spider-Man video game series is, and the fact that Sony could publish like really, really good games. And because of that, um, I wouldn't necessarily say that the console wars is over, even though, Call of Duty is gonna be available on, on Nintendo consoles and on the PlayStation consoles in the future, because of the deals that that Activision had signed with both Nintendo and Sony, because they had just won a settlement with, or not a settlement, they just won like a suit against the FTC, and they promised that they were going to commit to, bringing Call of Duty to other game systems, because they're not trying to violate any type of antitrust laws or anything like that. And I think that's being done to kind of support their claim and everything. But honestly, it's going to be very interesting to see what the landscape of gaming looks like, and and how things are going to look between Nintendo and Sony. Because when it comes down to game systems and the console wars, it seems like they're the only two left at the moment.